Welcome back to Success with Steven. My name is Steven Smith. If you're new to this channel, we provide finance tips, business strategies, and everything that does involve finance. Today, I'm going to tell you 10 things school did not teach you about credit, and I'm going to break that down into 3 different parts. In part 1, we're going to discuss what is credit. In part 2, we're going to discuss the history of credit. And in part 3, I'm going to give you the 10 things that school did not teach you about credit. And if you're not familiar with my channel, welcome. I've helped over 200 people now get rid of charge-offs, collections, late payments, and delete derogatory information on their credit report. If you take a look at my channel and you need help with that, I have an entire playlist on credit repair, DIY tips. And if you need help with anything else as far as budget and increasing your credit score, I do have videos on that as well. Now, let's get into the first part. What is credit? And before I go over the definition of what credit is, I'm just going to give you how I perceive credit. So if I were to call you today and I were to say, hey, you've known me for 10 years, we're friends. Can you spot me $500? I'm going to get my car fixed and I'll pay you back next week. And you know, I always pay you back with interest. I'll give you an extra $100. If you know me, you'll probably say, hey, that's Steven. He always pays me back. And every time he pays me back, sometimes he pays me back in 3-4 days. He pays me back early and he always gives me a little bit of extra money on top. So you know me, you trust me, right? So of course you'll give me the money. I'll pay you back with interest. Here's $600. Thank you. That's going to build some trust. Now, let's say a stranger was to call you. Same thing. Hey, can I borrow $500? You don't know this person. So initially, you're going to be thinking, I don't know. I don't even know you. But what if I slid you a little note? I say, yo, that's Mark. Mark has paid back everyone he's borrowed money from over the last 10 years, and he rarely ever asks for money. You'd say, oh, okay. Well, Mark looked like he's responsible with his money. Yeah, sure. I'll borrow to Mark. Mark gonna pay me back a little bit extra. Awesome. Third phone call came. Can I borrow $500? It's from Mike. Mike is on his 9th phone call. Mike asked 9 people for the same $500. And Mike owes 4 people that same $500 and hasn't paid them back. Slid you a little note. I say, hey, Look at this. You're going to look at Mike and say, man, Mike hasn't paid back anybody their money, and he's called 9 other people asking for more money? Definitely not, right? Because you don't know him, and clearly he doesn't pay anybody back. So that's how I see credit reports. Credit reports just let you know how likely someone is to pay you back. And if you have a credit score where you're rebuilding right now, or you have new credit, you have to look at it from that perspective. New credit, I don't know if you will or you won't, so I can't say what's going to happen. Bad credit, well, you have a history that you don't pay back. And maybe your history isn't that bad, so maybe I'll let you borrow money, but you're going to have to pay me back double. If I let you borrow 5, I need 1,000. That's a crazy interest rate, right? But that's the idea to look at it when you're thinking about, will someone lend you money? Look at it objectively speaking. So a credit score is a 3-digit number, typically between 300 and 850, designed to represent your credit risk or the likelihood you will pay back your bills on time. So creditors and lenders consider your credit score as a factor when deciding whether to approve you for a new account, and your credit score may also impact the interest rate and other terms on any loan or other credit account for which you qualify. This is simply what credit is. Now, for the history of credit, this actually started back in the 1800s. It goes much further back, but at that time, it was very hard for people to borrow money. You borrowing money was based off of your relationships with bankers, and it was also based off of your reputation. That's why a lot of elders, they go off of, my word is my word. A handshake should say more than enough. Now your credit report supersedes your reputation. But in the past, your reputation determined whether or not someone would lend you money. Now, we're going to start from the 1960s. That's kind of where all the things that we look at credit today, where they come into play, because there were over, I think, 2,000 credit reporting agencies before they were consolidated really into these top three. So in 1968, TRW Information Systems was founded to acquire credit data, followed by the creation of TransUnion, another credit bureau. In 1969, TRW later sold to two private equity firms as Experian in 1996. In 1970, the Fair Credit Reporting Act was passed. This required credit bureaus to make their information public and remove any data that may be caused by discrimination, such as race, sexuality, or disability. RCC changed its name to Equifax in 1975. This was solidifying the three credit bureaus as we know them today: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, our top three. The three agencies partnered with the technology company Fair, Isaac and Company, FICO, to create a score in 1989. The first FICO score for general use was introduced, and now the primary score used for lending purposes is your FICO score, your FICO 8 score. You also have a Vantage score. That was a credit model started by the credit bureaus. I have a video on that if you need that to be explained. But for the most part, the one that we focus primarily on is FICO 8. That's the one that we take a look at. Okay. Now that we've gone over the history and what is credit, we're going to talk about the 10 things that they do not teach you in school when it comes to credit. So number one, your FICO score breakdown. Everyone who has credit, or every person, I should say, starts off with a 300 credit score. No one starts off as 0. So basically, the number 300 is undefined. We don't know whether you pay back or you don't pay back. This is just the number that you get when you start. Nothing. 300 is what they give you because they don't know what you will or what you won't do yet. So having no credit is almost like, not like you're being penalized, but you have to participate in actively paying off debt in order to play this game. So no matter what, they force you to have to take on some debt in order to get a score. So if you don't have anything at all and you're not participating in paying debt in some way, it doesn't help you. But 300 is the start. So the name of the game is, how do you get the other 550 points? If we all start off at 300, a perfect credit score is 850. The other 550 points, how do we get it? Now, this is the breakdown. On-time payments and history are 35% of your credit score. They account for 192.5 points. On-time payments is 35%, 192.5. That means if you had a perfect credit score and you had one late payment, just one, you can lose 100 points for one late payment. That's why on-time payments, even though it seems like, oh, one late payment isn't a big deal, it is the biggest factor of your credit score. So with knowing that, that's probably going to make you want to ensure that you never have a late payment. This is something that they don't talk about. Even though you know the percentage, I don't think we always knew what the weight of that meant. One late payment can kill the whole thing. Your second biggest factor for your credit score is utilization, which is 30%. So utilization is how much credit you're using to what you have. So that makes up 165 points. Here's the secret tip about utilization. The only way for you to have utilization is to have a credit card. A revolving credit card account is the only account that has this factor, utilization. So you can't even get this 165 points. You can have a car, but if you don't have the 165, if you don't have a credit card, you're missing out on 165 points alone. So that should tell you a big factor is the first thing you should do if you want to get a good credit score and get the most of these points. Get a credit card, pay it on time, pay your utilization down to 10%. Some people say 30, it needs to be 10. Let me give you an example. If you have a credit card that has a limit of $200, 10% of that credit card is $20. So most people have a misunderstanding about credit cycles. When you first get a credit card, you have a statement cycle. That statement cycle usually runs from, let's say, the 15th of the month, and it'll close on, let's say, the 18th. That's your cycle date. People get confused about paying your credit card in full. You don't want to pay your credit card in full. You want to leave a balance. Now, let me explain what that means. If I use my credit card between the months of January and February, when my cycle date closed, it said that I had $20 left. You need to let that $20 report to the credit bureau so that it shows 10%. You can use your card then, the other $180, use it. When your statement is due, you pay the $20 you originally had, and then you need to pay your credit card down by $160, leaving $20 left. You need to let that $20 report, and then the next cycle date, it's going to say you owe, or your next due date, you owe $20. Use your credit card, leave $20 in that cycle date, let it report the 20, pay it off, and then use it. Leave 20, let it report. I hope that makes sense, because I know that it's very confusing the way that cycle dates work, but you just need to make sure that you leave 10%. It's not going to cause you interest because the 10% that you're leaving is always going to be in the cycle date. If you want to make this as easy as possible, get a credit card, get something like Netflix and Hulu. That should get you like around $25, something like that. Get like a couple little subscriptions. Set an auto pay to pay it after your cycle date has closed. That way it'll always report the 20, and then your auto pay will always pay it after the cycle date closes. It literally will be on a cycle where it's just going to be on-time payments. You'll never lose that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Your credit age is 15%. That is 82.5 points of your credit score. Now, credit age is the one thing that I'm not going to say you can't manipulate it, but it's the one thing that sometimes you got to wait for. Like even for my credit score, it just got to the low 800s. At this point, I ran a simulation on my credit score. I pretty much have used up most of the points in every single category. So now all I have to do is just age my credit. I can do nothing but just wait now. Only time with the Experience Simulator, if you guys have ever used that, it shows you like what will happen if you make changes on your credit score. I'm at the point now where no matter what change I put, the only thing that actually will boost my credit score is time. So credit age is 15%, and that makes up 82.5 points. Every time you open an account, it cuts your age in half. So if you open an account and you have it open for 1 year, and then after 1 year you open a new account, it's going to cut your credit age to 6 months. So just think of it like that. Every new account cuts the credit age in half. So opening new accounts can hurt your credit age the older your credit age is. So think about that. It's put in place to try to discourage you from opening too many accounts. Just think about that. You got to play the game. Hard inquiries are 10% of your credit score. They take up to 55 points. Now, we already know of ways to remove hard inquiries. And of course, you want to make sure you don't remove hard inquiries that are associated with accounts that you would like to keep. Hard inquiries stay on your credit report for 2 years. So naturally, they'll fall off after 2 years. 55 points is not that much, but you definitely want to make sure you're not actively using too many hard inquiries, because if it looks like you're trying to get credit and you need money, that can turn lenders off. Credit mix is 10%. Credit mix is the different types of accounts that you have. So if you have nothing but just straight credit cards, that's not going to look too good. You want to have a mix of you want to have a mix of loans. You want to have a mix of credit cards. You want to have different types of credit card accounts. You don't just want to have just the one. So this all together adds up to 550 because again, everyone starts off at 300. So if you want to get a perfect credit score, you have to know all of these factors and how these points break down. Okay, now these are going to be the other tips that they don't teach you in school. It's going to be 2 through 7, and this is how to build credit fast. Number 2 that they don't tell you, you need to get a bank account with a checkings and a savings account. Now, why? When you apply for a credit card, when you look at the application always asks you whether or not you have a checking and a savings. Now, here's why they ask. How are you going to pay back any of your accounts if you don't have a checking account to pay it back with? They also want to make sure that you have an idea of how you're going to be responsible with saving money, that there's going to be an actual cushion somewhere that you have prepared in case you need to, possibly take from that to pay them back. So it just looks more responsible when you have a checking account and a savings account. So for every credit card application, you always want to make sure that you say that you have a checking and you have a savings account. You want to apply for a secured card. Now, if you have good credit, this wouldn't really apply to you because you probably already have a credit card that you're using with rewards or points or something of that nature. Excuse me. If you're rebuilding credit, you want to apply for a secured card. There are some secured cards that don't even give you a hard inquiry. And there are also some credit card building apps like Ava and Kickoff that can give you a $2,500 credit card. The two of them combined would be a $5,000 credit card. No hard inquiry. It looks good. Those are two really good credit builder apps. If you have no credit, this is a good option because, again, there are some things that you can do where it doesn't even report a hard inquiry and you're guaranteed the approval for the most part. You want to get something like that. One, you need a guaranteed approval. You don't want to waste a hard inquiry if you get one, or you want to use a credit builder app where you can make sure that these accounts are going to report on-time payments with good limits. Then you want to apply for an installment loan. Remember what I said about credit mix? You need to make sure that you have different accounts. You don't just want just a credit card or 2 or 3, credit cards. You want installment loans. Again, I'm going to go over some that you can actually use, but that credit mix accounts for a good decent amount of points. When you're first trying to build credit or you're trying to get a higher credit score, you do not want any hard inquiries for 6 months at the very least. Don't apply for anything. If you're rebuilding, maybe even a year, but at minimum 6 months. Do not apply for anything if you can help it. Now, this is, of course, after you got the secured card or you've gotten some of the options where they don't do the hard inquiry. Do not do any more. Work with the installment loan, work with the secured card or the credit card building apps. Use that. Number 6, like I said before, you want to keep utilization at 10%. Keep it at 10%. And that's not 10% of your total cards. Like if you have 5 cards and the total of them is 2,000, you can't have like 1 or 2 cards maxed out or something, and that's 10% of the overall. It has to be 10% on every account. If one account is $200, $20 on that one. If that account has $300, only $30 on that one. Keep it at 10% and nothing more, because utilization is your second highest scoring factor and it's the easiest to control. Easy to control that. All you have to do is just pay and leave enough that the 10% can report, and then you pay that next month. And then you leave 10% so that it could report, and that's what you're going to pay next month. And you just keep doing that over and over again. And you want to ask for a credit line increase for eligible cards after 6 months. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, when you increase your credit limit, it makes the utilization easier to achieve. So if you had a $300 credit card that got increased to 1,000, well, now that 10% just completely changed, right? Now you can spend more on that card. 10% would go to $100. And if you had a $10,000 card, now 10% is 1,000. So on and so forth. Not to say that you can't use more of that card. You can, but what you want to try to do is, if you use, $8,000 of that card, make sure you pay $7,000 before your cycle close date. Let the 1,000 report to the credit bureaus. They're going to report 10%, and that's also going to be the amount due on your next due date. So now if you want to go use $9,000, cool. But now you have to pay the $1,000 that you owe. Take that $9,000 and pay that down to $1,000, and let the $1,000 report 10%. And you just keep doing that over and over again. Once you start to get in the habit of doing it, it becomes very, very easy to control, very easy for you to maintain. And these following 2 through 7, they don't teach you this. This will be the thing that will get you to, this is what got me to a 700 credit score fast. It took no time at all, just by doing these things, just to know these things. This is going to help you. I'm telling you, they don't teach you this. So this is the other thing. Number 8, do not end any short-term installment loans. Don't close them early on any secured cards or loans. So remember, I was saying that if you don't actively participate in debt paying, then you're not going to have a credit score. You don't want to pay these accounts off early because they're reporting on-time payments. I know you're thinking, the moment I pay this account off, my credit score is going to go up because I paid the account off. It's going to be the contrary. You pay the account off, and now there's no more on-time payments coming from this account. It's just going to be closed and paid. So now it's actually going to drop your score, and that doesn't make sense to people. But think about this. We just said 35% of your score is on-time payments. 10% of your score is credit mix. So when you pay that account off, don't you lose 2 things? You lose on-time payments, and you lose credit mix because the account's gone. Well, not gone, but it's closed. So that doesn't help you. So the thing about credit is, in order for it to be good, you have to always be actively paying on an account. So it's like it almost makes it to where you're in a situation where the only way to have perfect credit is that you're always paying something. So there's never going to be a point where you're not paying for something. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the only way to get the best credit score. You have to always actively be paying on something. And not only that, it can't just be a credit card. It has to be a mix of credit cards, installment loans, auto loans, mortgage. It has to be a mix. That's how they get you. Of course, we know we can't miss any payments. We know that. And then an easy trick is to put all your subscriptions on a credit card and set up auto pay. So we kind of brushed over that, but just to reiterate, you want to make sure that you're paying your accounts and you're never late. The easiest way to do that, especially with a small limit, is, like I was saying, take your Netflix, your Hulu, your Peacock, your HBO, your whatever. It's very cheap. You could get that to where if you even have a $500 limit, 10% is $50. Set up your auto pay for those subscriptions. Make sure that the auto pay is set to after the cycle date closes, so that balance can report to the credit bureaus, and then it'll pay it after it reports. That way, it'll show that you're paying, that you're using it, and then you're paying it. Because if you report 0 utilization, it's not going to count for anything. It's going to look like you're not using it. Remember what I said. You have to actively be participating in debt, in paying debt, in order to help your score. So if you pay the account in full and leave a 0 balance, it's going to look like you're not using it. The only thing that matters is what's reported when your cycle date closes. So if you pay it off in full before the cycle date closes, it's going to just look like you never had a balance to begin with. How are you going to get 10% utilization if you paid it all off? So again, you're always paying off what you're using in that cycle date to 10%. Whatever it says that you owe for the previous month, you pay that on the due date. And then whatever you've used in your current cycle, you reduce it to 10% before the cycle date closes. That reports. Now we have a report less than 10%, and we're able to use our card actively. You just got to maintain that. That's it. This is the easiest trick to do it. Subscriptions and pay it on time. Spotify, your gym membership, whatever, as long as it's 10%, put it on auto pay, throw the card in a drawer, wait 6 months. You'll have great credit, especially if you don't have any derogatory marks or charge-offs. But if you do that, put it in a drawer, leave it alone, or download the Ava app. They give you a virtual card. They give you a list of subscriptions. They're things most people use. They only let you use 10% anyway, basically. Do that. Let that pay off. You're good. So any credit applications, before any credit applications, pay your utilization between 1% and 3% to maximize score. So this whole time I've been saying 10%, right? Because as a general consensus, I want to make sure that you're using your card actively, because there are some times where if you're not using a lot of your limit, then they can reduce your credit limit. But when you're getting ready to try to get approved for something, pay it down to around 1% to 3%. Pay it down there because that's going to give you a nice little boost in your score. Again, this is why I talk. They don't teach you this. Before you go to apply for like a new credit card, get all of your accounts down to 1% to 3% to get a nice little boost before you apply. And make sure that all the credit cards report. That way you'll get that nice credit boost. Okay? It's another great tip. And number 9, when you're in the process of rebuilding credit, or if you're new to credit, you need to know the difference between a subprime card and a starter card. A subprime card are for people who are rebuilding credit. Premier Bank, Open Sky, Credit One Platinum, Fortiva MasterCard, Merrick Bank, Indigo MasterCard, Pedal One Visa, Tomo Credit Card, a Bank of America, the Secured Card, a Milestone MasterCard, a Surge Secured Card. These are all cards that you're going to see for people who are rebuilding credit. And these are not technically, I wouldn't say bad credit cards, but the purpose of these cards are for people who are rebuilding. And because of that, they're going to have higher APR. They probably have annual fees. They're not the best cards, but there's different levels. As you level up, you get better accounts. But just know the difference, because if you have bad credit, these list of cards, if you want those, are the cards that you're going to qualify for. Again, there are alternatives like Ava and like Kickoff. Those report as $2,500 credit card accounts, a total of $5,000. They can help your utilization. And as long as you pay what you owe for the accounts every month or the balance, you're perfectly fine. Just set up auto pay. Those accounts will also help if you don't want to use any one of these because you don't want to pay an annual fee or you don't want to have high interest. For those of you with no credit, you want to use the Discover It, Capital One Platinum, Pedal 2 Visa, the Citi Secured MasterCard, Capital One Quicksilver Card, Capital One Platinum, the secured version, or unsecured, Chase Freedom, the student card, the Self-Secured Card, Chime Credit Builder, or any credit cards from your local bank or your credit union. So pretty much as you can see, like starter cards are very different than subprime cards. So you don't want to waste a hard inquiry trying to get these starter cards when you're rebuilding because there's a good chance you'll get denied. You're better off looking at the subprime cards and you'll get approved. If you're new to credit, you want to avoid the subprime cards because why pay the annual fees or get the extra high interest if you don't have to? Go with the credit cards that are for new credit. You'll have a better chance of getting approved, and you'll get better rates. All right. And again, those are things that you need to know the difference of that they won't teach us. Subprime cards, starter cards, and then you could do more research on other cards or credit builders, apps, and things of that nature. And number 10 for your short-term installment. These are my recommendations. You can use Self. You can use, if you're a member of Navy Federal Credit Union, the pledge loan. Chime has a credit builder. There are furniture accounts that you could get. Like, for example, I'm trying to think of one of those, like, not Ashley Furniture, but there are furniture stores that you'll get a card in the mail, and they'll give you like a certain amount of time to pay it off, and it reports to the credit bureaus. That's basically the same as a short-term installment loan or any other loan under 36 months. You want to, like, I think even Affirm has that. Affirm has that when you buy things, but you want to make sure that it's something where it's going to be up to 36 months, maybe 24 months, something a little bit longer, not like something that's going to be like 3 or 4 months. Like that's kind of short. But Afterpay, Affirm, Klarna, if you're getting something where you can do that for like 24, 36 months, that's pretty good too. But those are easy installment loans that you can get that will help with your credit mix. Now, if you were to take all of these things that they never taught us and you were to do all of these things, you are going to have a great credit score. So, congratulations. You now have good credit based off of the things that they do not teach us in school. Now, here's a bonus tip for people who are rebuilding. If you're rebuilding, I have videos here that will teach you about removal. You want to check those out. I'll probably link them here. Please check those out. If you need help with budgeting your money, there's going to be a video here on how to budget your money and how to save. And that one's really, really good. I think that's one of my best videos. And again, these are definitely tips that you want to follow. If you learned something that you didn't know, please put it down in the comments. Please let me know what it is that you didn't learn. If you have any additional information that you want to add, please comment that at the bottom. I always love learning, so please put that there, and it's good for the community. Let me know of any other videos you guys would like me to cover, and you have a wonderful day.